Greetings, Pilgrims, and welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage. And today, I'm going to show you how we can create a custom die, as in a pair of dice, singular, in our world here. And it will tell us which side is facing upwards. So as I push this die around, you see there he goes, flying off in the distance. And he'll roll and he'll roll and he'll end up on a face. So here we can see the face. And if I go to our inspector, it's telling me that face number 4 is showing. And where did he go? There he is, and that is correct. 1 minus 5 is indeed 4. So let's jump into explaining how we created this guy. So we'll stop the play there and look at our die. So here's our die floating in space, and as you can see, in lieu of a texture, what I've done is just created these boxes on each side, and I've created the Roman numeral equivalents so that we know what the faces are. And it should be set up just like a real die, that every opposite side equals the right number. I don't think I did that correctly though. On a real die, every opposite side equals 7. So anyway, so we have our die here, and you'll notice that there are these other boxes floating in space. So now if I expand this, you'll see we have a ton of things here. And what I have here are faces 1 through 6. And if you look at these objects, these are the actual boxes. And then these cubes, all of these cubes, are what make up the actual numbers. So if you kind of ignore those, what we have are 6 cubes that I have labeled as face 1 through 6. And all they do is they exist here floating outside of the surface. And these are going to be our objects that we're going to query to figure out how high up they are in the world. And that will tell us which face is showing. So if I click on the die once again, and I'm going to minimize all this, we look down here, we have die roll is a script that's been applied, and we have our side flag, and that's what I'm calling these little boxes, these flags. And so for each of those, I've made it a six-digit array, and I have put into this each of the faces. So then we have side showing. This is what gets populated just for our debugging purposes, so we know it's correct. And the maximum is our maximum height. So let's go ahead and look at the script. So I'm going to pull that up now. And here's the script. It's quite simple. I'll step through it with you. Up here we have a public game object array of side flags, a public string called side showing, which side is showing, a float maximum, which is currently set to 0, and we have our rigid body, and we have our velocity set as a vector 3. So in the start, we're going to get our rigid body, and then we're going to get our velocity is equal to the rigid body's velocity. So we're going to know when the cube has stopped all motion, and this is how we're going to do that. And then our side flag is equal to the game object with the object's tag of side flag, and that's going to get our array. Okay, so now in the update, what we're doing is we're checking for when the cube has stopped moving. So if velocity.magnitude is less than a new vector 3 of a very small amount, in this case 0.005, dot magnitude, then we're going to call our custom function. And here for debugging purposes, I had one where I would hit G to get the side. So we don't even need that right now, but just know that you can put something like this in if you want to see manually, if you want to check it for debugging purposes. So once our cube has stopped moving, let's jump down here to get face showing. So in get face showing, we're going to first set our max to 0. We want to say this is 0. Then we're going to iterate through the array. So if you're not familiar with for loops, it's pretty simple. We start off with an integer, which we're going to call I, set it to 0, and say continue until I is less than, so long as rather, I is less than side flag dot length. So what that means is our side flag is our array. So how many are in the array dot length, and we're going to continue until we've exhausted all of that, and then we're going to increment by 1 I. So I is going to equal 0, then 1, then 2. So as we do that, we're going to say if this elements transform.position.y is greater than max. If it's bigger than 0, well then max is going to equal this new position. So this guy is now going to be top of the totem pole. And then we're going to show the name of the side. Now the great thing about this is it's going to do this in update. So it's going to keep checking all these slides. So once it's finished, it's going to look at every single one and go through this iteration and say, oh, this guy is higher than 0. Okay, but then we check the next one. If he's higher still, because max has now been set to him, now he's going to go even higher on the totem pole. So when we're all done, we're going to have the absolute highest, vertically in the world, the highest cube. And that's got to be the face that is showing. Every time, absolutely, it's flawless as far as that logic. My code maybe not, but that logic, yes. So if we look at, go back here and look at this, so it's hard to really roll this die and get it to end up on a particular number that we want, but let's go ahead and run it again. And here we go. So right now what's the face is showing is 1, and if I do this, let's uncheck the maximize on play. And I have the die selected. We can see here side showing. So now when I hit play, the outside interface is going to stay, and we can see which face is showing. So now face 1 is showing. So now if I push it a little bit, and now we'll end up with 2. And there we go, face 2. And see the max here? That is the absolute height of, if I go to the pause mode, and let's go back to the scene, that maximum is the height of this guy here. So if I can select him, let's see if I can select him. Face 2 is this guy. Face 2, his Y value, it's not showing me his Y value. Oh, it's relative to the object that it's on. However, what the code gets is the world position, which is what we need. So the code works, but this guy, just believe me, is at 3.738, so forth, up into the world. And there he is. He is the highest on the totem pole, so therefore face number 2 is showing. And we can push him around a bit more. If you kind of jump a little bit, you can really make it fly. Now that's 3 showing. And then without looking at the number in the corner there, I can tell you 2 is showing. Yep, 2 is showing. So this is what I did the day that I made this. I just started bouncing it around and checking, not looking at the bottom corner here, and just checking to see that I know what face it's on. And if you can get it into some really, I say, compromising angles, it will still work. It's always got to be the one that has the highest Y value. So even if it's on a pretty extreme angle, the only way this ever breaks down is if you have it in a situation that it would land exactly in its corner on an exact type of quadrilateral point in the ground, and that would be very, very rare indeed. So even this is still showing 4, which I would agree is the most upward. So there you go. There's how to make your very own die. It's pretty simple. And what I'm going to be working on, maybe not for next week, but the week after, is an ability to have multiple dice and then a collection system which will look at all of the dice and tell you what the collective number is. Or if you have a project like mine where I'm not going to end up having numbers, actually, I'm going to end up having faces. It's still all the same in the background. I just set a face equal to a number, but to be able to look at these faces and report how many of each type of face I have, so that way I can calculate how I want to change the game based upon those things. So I hope that you guys have found this interesting, at least, if not very valuable. And if you are making dice, this is a really simple, easy way to do it. It's a known algorithm, and it's quite effective, which is why a lot of people use it. And just threw together a simple little environment here so that we could have some rough terrain to push the die around, so we could see it roll and prove that it works. So as always, guys, I hope that you have enjoyed. Keep practicing, get better, and I will see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.